Fraziali Ismail, the Assistant Governor of Bank Negara, Malaysia. Dr. Muhammad Abdul Khalid, Research Fellow at the Institute of Malaysian and International Studies of UKM. Yang berbahagia Professor Emeritus Dato Dr. Muhammad Azmi Omar, the President and CEO of INSEF University. Members of INSEF University's Management Committee, distinguished guests, researchers, faculty members, students, respected colleagues, ladies and gentlemen who are joining us here at the INSEF University Lounge and those joining us online, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat datang and welcome everyone to INSEF University's latest ID at INSEF series entitled The Rising Costs versus Flat Wages Escaping the Wallet Squeeze. And allow me to introduce myself. My name is Izzuddin and I'm delighted to be your MC for today. And we actually have a double bill today of events where we are having this ID series happening right now. And right after this, we have another sharing session co-organized by SIF entitled Achieving Social Finance Through Technological and Islamic Products Innovation happening right after this. So stay tuned for that, inshallah. Before we kick things off, allow me to go through some housekeeping. Our speakers will present for about 45 minutes roughly, and then we will open the floor for Q&A. For those who are in the lounge, please raise your hand and wait for the mic to be handed to you and ask your question for the benefit of our viewers online. And those who are joining online, please submit your questions in the Q&A window on Zoom, and we will try our best to address all the questions answered. To have all the questions answered in the allotted time, inshallah. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our panelists for today. First, it is with great honor for me to introduce Mr. Fraziali Ismail, the Assistant Governor of Bank Negara, Malaysia. AG Fraziali is a career central banker and currently oversees matters related to monetary policy, economics, international surveillance, data management, and statistics. Previously, he led BNM's financial regulation sector, where his areas of responsibilities include financial surveillance, prudential regulations, consumer and market conduct, as well as payment services policies. He began his career at BNM in the economic sector, progressing to assume the role of Director of the Monetary Policy Department and subsequently the Economics Department. In a career spanning more than 2 decades, he has been involved in several high-level government policy and development committees. In his capacity, he shaped and designed and advised on the formulation of key public policies, particularly to help Malaysia navigate through the Asian financial crisis in 97 and 98 and the global financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. Under his various roles in the central bank, he has also authored and overseen the publication of working and research papers of the Malaysian economy, monetary policy, and financial stability. AG Fraziali holds a master's degree in economics from the London School of Economics and Political Science. Welcome to INSEF, AG. And on his right is Dr. Muhammad Abdul Khalid, the Research Fellow at the Institute of Malaysian and International Studies of UKM. He holds a PhD from the Paris Institute of Political Studies. Don't ask me to pronounce the French name, but I translated it. He is also a fellow at the World Inequality Lab, Paris School of Economics, and a senior associate at the Malaysian Industry Group of High Technology, or MITE. He is currently the chairman of the Allianz General Insurance Company Malaysia Berhad and a board member of Allianz Malaysia Berhad. Between 2018 to 2020, he served as the economic advisor to the Prime Minister of Malaysia and a member of the Economic Action Council. He was also a board member at the Malaysian Investment Development Agency, MIDA, and the Malaysian Institute of Economic Research, MIER, and a member of the Honorary Council of Advisors of the European Malaysian Chamber of Commerce. His professional experience includes Director of Research at Khazanah Research Institute, Head of Economics at the Securities Commission Malaysia, Senior Analyst at the Institute of Strategic and International Studies Malaysia, and a Senior Technical Advisor to the United Nations Development Programme UNDP Malaysia. He has been a consultant for the World Bank and several United Nations agencies such as UNICEF, UNFPA, UNHCR, and the United Nations Economics and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, UNESCAP. To moderate the session today, we have Associate Professor Dr. Eskandar Shah Mohammad Rasid. He is the CEO of ISRA Consulting. And with that, I now pass the session to the capable hands of our moderator.
Thank you so much, MC, Brother Azuddin, Datuk, and INSEF senior management. So we are quite fortunate today that we have two, I would say, prominent speakers. Dr. Muhammad is very popular. I'm sure you've probably seen his TikTok, videos about his comment on economics. So I'm quite fortunate today that I'm moderating the sessions, and obviously AG has been very kind. Keep coming to INSEF. The first time I met AG was 5 years ago, post-COVID. I still remember he talked about 5C, China, commodity, credit, and all the problem that we had. So AG is quite good in terms of deconstructing the problems. So here we are, we're going to listen to these two prominent speakers. So let's take this opportunity to hear more from them. So we're going to have 3 rounds of questions. The first one is basically to deconstruct the problems. We like to know that how we end up in these situations. Obviously, when you look at Malaysia, a lot of rosy things that have been pictured, economic growth for the last 20 over years. So all the positive macro data, but yet we are still struggling with some of the structural issues. And this is one of the, I would say, at this point of time, quite a profound issues, especially, looking at the current scenario. All right, so it's very timely. So we're going to discuss it, and then the second one, we're actually going to reconstruct the problem. We're going to find out that how we want to get out from here, so that 5 years, 10 years down the road, we will actually talking about something different, a much more, a different kind of problems, not the same problems. And then the third one, we'll just keep it open and see how the flow and where the discussion goes, and we will take it from there. So maybe we will start from Dr. Muhammad. Dr. Muhammad is very good in terms of telling us the problem, right? So Doc, maybe we can start, right? So, Doc, I mean, it's kind of funny that, we are talking about this kind of issues, right? I mean, people always say Malaysia is an economic model. We've been expressing growth since independence, averaging about 4 or 5%. People keep saying that, in the past, social mobility was quite easy, but now it's much more harder. And people, brain drain issues, people are leaving the countries and people are looking for better opportunity. So maybe for the benefit of us, and we're trying to understand this, maybe you can like simplify the issues for us, deconstruct it, how we end up in these situations, and why, and why this situation is actually quite concerning at this point of time. Maybe Doc, please.
Terima kasih. I speak in English. Yes? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, then I speak in English. Assalamualaikum, good afternoon. First of all, thank you for the kind invite. It's a pleasure to be here. The question that you pose, we've been growing, what are the issues? How do we get here? Let me be honest from the onset. Malaysian issues is never about growth. We always grow. In the past 30 decades, I think only 2 times we're negative. 2008 and during crisis since 1998. 30 years, almost uninterrupted, sustainable. We've done well at the macro level since 1997. Even if you take earlier, you said since independence, we've done extremely well. I think only about 14 countries in the World Bank did a study, only 14 countries in the world that managed from low to upper middle, and there's a few that make it to high income. Malaysia has done extremely well, something that we should be proud of. I'll give you some statistics. When we got our independence, 1957, out of 10,000 kids, 10,000 kids that was born, about 150 would not celebrate 5th birthday. Child mortality is very high. Infant mortality very high. Now our level is OECD numbers. So we've done extremely well. Why did we do extremely well? 2 things. Number 1, we decided from early on, we did not fight each other. If you fought, you're not going to grow. There's no stability. From early on, we did not fight, sharing of power that continue until today. I think there's a lesson there for many countries. And number two, we were very lucky that the first three prime ministers were civil servants. So the government had a vision and the execution was extremely well because they knew how civil service works. It's not because of British were pretty useless. Whatever revenue that we have, all exported back to UK. Nothing was from here. So we're very lucky. We decided what matters. And I remember World Bank asked us to do a report, but they want it in terms of video. What made Malaysia successful? So we interviewed all the key players. And I remember we interviewed Kuli at his house. He said, one phrase that I remember, I thought it was very clever. He said, we decided from early on, we're not going to spend our money on guns and barracks. We're going to spend on school and hospital. And the share of budget that go to school and hospital, education and health, we can discuss later what's the output. But those two sectors, what brings us here, what Malaysia become. I think that we got our priorities right. So the issue, we done well. That point number one. Number two, we've been growing, which is always is exceptional. And part of it, I would say, thanks to these guys. Because since 1997, we never had any financial crisis. So monetary policy has been very accommodative towards growth. Growth is not an issue. It's not about growing the size of the cake. The issue, who gets the cake. The issue is always about distribution. That's why there's a lot of anger. SST issue. It only collect 5 billion. Why so much anger? Because purchasing power has been declining. And this, again, I have to thank these guys. Because I thought the annual report that they were published 2 months ago was very excellent. Because they show, they calculated from 2019 until 2024, wages grew up by about 7% in nominal terms. Food alone increased by 17%. In real terms, actually purchasing power declined. Decline for, if you know, low income consume more food than others. 40 to 50% of the income goes to food. Purchasing power for low income is much worse. If you're a graduate, 5 years ago, your median starting salary is 2.2. Now 1.747. You're worse off. PNB also did a paper. They released 2 months ago, I think. They show if you are you're a graduate with master qualification, actually there's no income growth. Master 20 years ago until now, basically no income growth. You're better off without master. There's no monetary value added to that. So the issue is not about growth. The issue is about purchasing power has been declining. And what does it mean? Wages in real terms did not grow. Cost of living has been going up, despite productivity is higher. So you cannot say because I'm lazy, because I'm not producing. Their numbers show productivity was 5% during the same period, but my income growth in real terms is negative, which means I'm not paying you. That's why you see from the share of income, how much goes to government, how much goes to capital, and how much goes to labor. Labor actually declining. We're already at the low level, about 33, 34%. America is 50. Singapore is higher than us, very capital. Hong Kong higher than us. So we don't pay our workers enough. Can we pay our workers enough? Yes, we can, and yes, we should. A lot of countries show you increase minimum wage, there's no impact on labor. There's not people lay off. You don't see that. Many countries have done this. So the first issue is that distribution. That I think is a very serious issue because your purchasing power is declining. We did a paper for Paris School Economic. It was published. We looked between 2016 to 2022. We include not just on household income, we include tax data, we combine. And we see the income share that accrued to top 10 went up. Top 1 went up. Bottom 90 went down. So the growth only goes to people like you. You guys, top 10, top 1. You guys are top 10. It's not difficult to be top 10. If you get more than 8,000 a month, you're top 10, including the EPF data. So all of you is top 10. He's probably top 0.1, you top 0.1. All this are loaded. Included. So the issue is that we are growing, but we're not sharing, and the impact purchasing power declining. And what does it mean? There's other non-economic implications. Number one, if you look at poverty, relative poverty is very high. Even as we growing high middle income country, and if you slice states, some states already high income. KL has been high income. If you want to, why Malaysia is not high income? KL has been high income since 2004, 2005. Penang already be high income. Johor already be high income if their own, Johor is own country. So Bangsa Johor. So they're already high income. Penang already high income. But in Sabah, poverty rate is 20%. 1 in 5 is poor. Sabah. They produce 10% of palm oil globally, largest producer of crude. But among the poverty still remains an issue. Despite that, we growing. That's why people are angry. SST, they're angry. I'm already not in good shape, man. Now you increase. Poverty towards child. Gandhi said, you want to see progress, not GDP. You want to see progress, look at the face of those vulnerable, marginalized. And I would say in Malaysia is the children. Stunting in children is 20%. Same number as 1999. We're not growing. 20%. If you take rural Sarawak, it's 40% on child poverty. Other form of multidimensional poverty, you look at education. Where World Bank produced a number, 42% of Malaysian age 10 cannot read and write at that age. Health is the same. This would have an impact. What is the impact? I'm going to have, our population is shrinking. I need all this population to be good. But you're growing up weak. If you're stunted, your brain is not the issue of short, issue of this, of your brain, not properly developed, which means you're not going to be a good student, which means you're going to have good income, which means the issue that we face later are going to come and creep up. Inequality, and in Malaysia, everything is about race, is also going to have a racial dimension. It will lead to social and political stability. That's our problem. Your second part asks, how do we get here? I think we get here when we devalue labor. The devaluation of labor. Why we devalue labor? Because our economic strategy, we want FDI, we use labor, low cost labor to become competitive. In fact, we're cheaper than China in terms of our labor. This is one of the key factors of devaluation of labor that make us here. I'm not going to go into governance and so on. Everybody know, although I think this is the most important factor. Social mobility, you also mentioned about social mobility. Why we had very good social mobility? It's one of the most impressive in the world. We know, bapa dulu je apa? Bapa dulu pernah kita driver taxi, nelayan. Fantastic. You ask this age group. We did a study when I was in Kazan, we did a study, 75% of those born poor before would move up the ladder. We update the study recently, different cohorts. How many of those B20 would climb the ladder all the way up? Out of 100, 1. Majority would climb up from B20 to B40. It's become very sticky. Now you reverse. How many from T20, the paper is published, T20 would move all the way down? 1 is the reverse. If you stay rich, you stay. If you're born rich, you stay rich. You're born poor, you stay poor. You just move one ladder. And the perception is the same. We asked Malaysian, in our study, we asked Malaysian, this paper with World Bank, we asked Malaysian, if there's 100 kids, poor kids, how many you think will move up? They said about 2 or 3 will move all the way up. They know it's going to be very difficult to move up because the policy that makes it work for social mobility is no longer. Affirmative action works. Access based on pure meritocracy doesn't work. It they call it opportunities hoarding. You do well, I give you a chance. You're supposed to do well. You're loaded. Makan ada, semua ada, and you have opportunities hoarding. My son need internship, tolong Sat. That's what we do. Minta scholarship, bagi Sat. Masuk MRSM, bagi Sat. So access to disadvantage has been minimized because we shifted away of what works. What can we do? we go to the second part lah. So I let Shah comment.
I think AG, you have a... You know, when I was in working abroad, someone commented like, you know, you guys Malaysians are very good in managing inflation. Like, you know, because their country have like 20%, 15%. And our inflation quite, you know, 2%, 3%. But yet, AG, I mean, you are running an economics department, statistics, so you have all the facts and figures which you managing. But before we go into the solutions, maybe AG can add a bit more, like, you know, how do we end up here? You know, at the from policy point.
Thank you, Dr. Eskandar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon. Tazmi, friends, thank you, INSEF, for inviting me again. I'm a fan of INSEF, so when INSEF invited me, I can't say no. Except that when I saw the invitation, my co-panelist is Dr. Mat. And I was like, alamak. Dr. Mat, I know Dr. Mat, he's my good friend. We served together in the government before. He's very smart, articulate, as you just saw just now. He's a author of best-selling book. Very stylish. He used to have a ponytail, you know, and when we walk, you know, people would take selfie with him and just ignore me. So I know in this session I'm gonna be in for a tough time. So I want to go back to what Dr. Eskandar asked, you know, in terms of, you know, how we got here. Inflation is low, and yet we have a cost of living issue. I've said this in the past, and I've been asked on this a few times. How is it that our inflation is low, right? And I always say that our inflation doesn't misbehave. Our inflation, it goes up mostly when it jumps. It's because of some shocks, but it doesn't get propagated, right? In a good way, in some sense, but also in a bad way, and I'll explain that in a bit. But what we are experiencing now is a cost of living, and cost of living is about your affordability to a basket of goods. Affordability involves income. So when you talk about cost of living, it is actually a horse race between the growth of your prices, which we know has been contained, and the growth of your income. So the fact is, like Dr. Muhammad said, over the years, our income has not been keeping up pace in that sense with the rate of development, with the rate of productivity and things like that, right? But when we talk about cost of living crisis, if you want to use the term, it doesn't just affect Malaysia. Cost of living is a major global issue, particularly post-COVID, right? We saw during COVID, for example, I don't want to go to it, the various supply and demand shocks caused prices to go up. It shot up. And then at the same time, because people were displaced, income were relatively static, even decline. And for those who have assets, for example, experienced an asset price inflation, which worsened the disparity, for example, right? And the kind of prices that went up involved the kind of things that we talk about. Food, because of supply shocks, because of energy price shocks. Services, many of us consume services. It's not true that only the T20 consume services. No, everybody consumes services now. So all these prices of necessities have gone up at a time when there is even wider disparity in terms of income and wealth. So the social impact is huge. But suddenly you feel it, you felt it in post-COVID, and you're still seeing it now. And there are many displacements in the job market that is preventing income from rising at a time when costs have gone up. Prices have gone up, but it has come down, right? So compared to a year ago, and people will shake their head when I say this, you know, our latest inflation print is 1.2% compared to a year ago. Prices in general have only gone up by 1%. But remember, it went up to quite high levels during COVID. We did not experience a negative inflation post-COVID, meaning prices continue to rise, right? So to the extent that your income doesn't keep up, you will feel that pinch. Now, let me go a bit in terms of, so we talk about that root cause, post-COVID and everything. I want to go back down to Malaysia. And Dr. Muhammad has mentioned many parts of this. I just want to add a few. We've got this far because we did a lot of things to our economy, and we did it right. You mentioned a lot of those. One prevalent factor that got us to where we are is our low cost model, right? Our low-cost model. What do I mean by that? It means we compete in terms of costs. So people come, FDI come, or even DDI, make something we can sell. Even domestically, we can consume at relatively cheap prices. The problem is that that model has kind of like served its course. And a few key things that try to uphold the model is breaking down. What are these things? This includes, for example, control prices and subsidies, massive subsidies. Subsidies are not a bad thing, right? But there's a limit to it in terms of how it works. Now we have maxed out, in that sense, the role of price controls, of subsidies, to the point where instead of helping, it's hindering further progress, right? So, I mean, we in Malaysia have never experienced oil prices at crazy levels, right? I know in Patla it went up 74 cents, if I'm not mistaken. But, in other countries, when oil prices hit $120 per barrel, it just trebled, people say, I know this example, when we say the prices of petrol in Malaysia is RM2, 5 cents. And in some of our neighbors, it's RM4, 5 ringgit, 9 ringgit, that sort of thing. And then people started comparing income. Yeah, but some poor countries also experience very high levels. Now we have been buttressed, been protected by subsidies. But it has gone to the point where the government can't take it anymore, right? Because there is no money left to spend on hospitals and I'm exaggerating. There is insufficient to upgrade our hospitals and schools, and that's certainly what we need now. So, and price controls, for example, remember at one time, price controls were so prevalent that we had empty shelves. Now, when you have empty shelves, everybody is affected, not just the poor, right? Why is there empty shelves? Because we tried to suppress the prices to the point where producers are withdrawing from supplying those goods and services. So, by hook or by crook, you need to adjust many of these things. But the moment you adjust it, it is contributing to this, precisely the cost of living pressure that we spoke about. So that's one. Low cost, subsidy, and control mechanisms have been overstretched. Another important thing is our wage market has been somewhat dysfunctional. What do I mean by that? Now, remember I said just now, when prices go up and doesn't get propagated, in other countries, it gets propagated in some sense because wages went up, wages go up. So there's extra pressure to keep the momentum going. In Malaysia, there is very, very small incidence of wage mechanism working itself. I'll give you an example. During COVID, remember we had shortage of workers everywhere, right? Because our foreign workers went back. Did wages go up? No, it did not. Right? You would remember, you go to factories, they put the banner, we want workers, but it's gone up by 50 ringgit. They offer free handphones instead of wages really making its way up, right? And even the mechanism to help alleviate shortage, for example, were not. Theoretically, you ought to go for technology, right? But because of the lack of maybe knowledge, we don't go for direct technology because maybe our entrepreneurs, find technology too costly or there are wrong incentives. You would see this, remember at the Mamak restaurant, there are robots, right? But what kind of robots are those? No, those robots are dumb, okay? They just go and everything, give you your teh tarik and things like that. It's hardly labor saving, right? And you see that almost everywhere. But that's silly technology. So, likewise, they want to invest in dishwasher, but they don't know which kind of dishwasher. Dishwasher bukan, it's not the kinds the one we use at home. The ones you get from Harvey Norman, Eng Seng Heng. No, it's not. But they don't know which ones to get. Of course, when they get those, it's unsuited for their needs. So even the mechanism to help us to upgrade our labor market is not there, right? And of course, that related question to why this is suppressed is low prevalence of low-skilled foreign labor. We've published this many, many times, right? The prevalence of low-skilled foreign labor is creating a lot of distortions in the economy. The locals can't compete given their cost needs, right? they can you know the arguments, right? They can stay in a room, rent cheaply, and things like that. And our producers, our employers have become hooked, and that gives us a very vicious cycle of mid-productivity trap, right? FDI many years ago was a game changer, right? Many of you, I've used this example before, might remember the term Minakaran, right? People from rural area come and work. There is a productivity acceleration, and with that, wage income acceleration. But since then, the kind of investments that come in are not the ones that create higher value jobs, right? So it creates jobs for low-skilled foreign workers in that sense. We have the statistics. Just look at our articles. I don't want to spend time quoting them here. So it doesn't. So the job market is not interesting enough. It's not creating the kind of productivity improvement that we see. And even when it does, there is a productivity increase. The job market is not clearing it at the right price, right? We've come up with research for the same amount of productivity. If our workers produce, say, for example, 1,000 ringgit of value added, $1,000 of value added compared to another country, we are paid a third less. Why is that the case? Various reasons. Mismatch of power, bargaining power, prevalence of foreign workers, a lot of things. So another thing that needs to be looked into is the wage clearing mechanism. And the one last thing that also gets missed is the prevalence of sometimes structural factors that keep wages low or costs exceedingly high. I remember a World Bank study. When they talk about our cities are sprawling cities, right? Meaning, and there's a lack of public transport in that sense. Even if there is now still issues about first and last mile connectivity. So people need to buy cars. When people need to buy cars, they need to spend a lot more. And they need to spend more on petrol, right? So the cost of you commuting to work is relatively higher than other countries. And the moment you touch oil prices, the moment you touch toll prices, the moment you touch a lot of things, it adds to your cost of living while your wages still have not kept pace. So this endemicity of structural issues are propagating this cost of living issues. Perhaps I'll stop here and then I'll talk about maybe in the second round about the need for reforms, and we can go more into all those.
Thank you so much, EG. Let me just sum up the first round. We know how to grow. We know how to contain inflations. We are quite good in bringing foreign workers. I think excellent in it. But then both Dr. Muhammad and also AG have highlighted quite a number of structural issues. I think these are all interrelated. I think we all can agree that, interrelated. I think one thing that I would like to touch as well is that, and perhaps it's been highlighted many times about our quality of education, which is also contributing to the fact that, it's very difficult to create high-end jobs. You touch about investment, and we are so proud of we are getting a lot of money from data center investment, right? But then if you really look at it in detail, then how many jobs that we can create from data center? Maybe 10, maybe 15. And apparently most of them might be a security guard, because all of them will be controlled remotely, right? So you talk about quality of FDI as well. So I don't know, maybe I just want to get Dr. Muhammad's opinion, right? I mean, we know the problem. We have deconstructed it now, wage, foreign workers, maybe education, harder social mobility, poverty trap. You talk about interstate poverty, Johor, Sarawak, maybe Selangor, a bit more advanced. Sabah is lagging behind. So where do we start then? I mean, it sounds so complex. Like, you talk about education, we're talking about education reform for many years, but they're still waiting it for happen. So Doc, maybe you can start first. Where do we start? I don't know which one that we should do it first. Or do we have a magic wand that says that, okay, if you do 1, 2, 3, all these problems will disappear,
You quoted earlier about 5 C's, right? There's an Arab saying, a good leader need 3 C's. Clean head, clean heart, clean hands. I think we know the problem. I think leadership matters. why we progress before. We have great, fantastic leaders, be it in the government or those who are running government agencies and companies. You take example, even Petronas. I think I was a scholar at Petronas, and we were very proud because there's one article in Fortune or Forbes 1 year is better well run, better ROE than Shell. That's why we are new. We're not even OPEC. We've done extremely well. Why did we do extremely well? From the day when we set the company, we built, established the company, we said we're going to run it as a corporation. I'll pay you corporate tax, then petrol income tax, don't ask anymore, compared to Pertamina and other oil companies. So we did extremely well. We got great leaders. If you don't have great leaders, then we're going to have an issue. Great leaders who, how do I use this? Very polite, sopan. Look, our economic policy is very regressive. Even SST. We want to tax, or we are taxing, we give some exemption 2 days ago, but we still tax food. We import 80%, 80 billion of food, 73 or 74, 80 billion of food import. You don't tax food. Because people, we have double malnutrition. Half of us are fat. And it's a cost. Yesterday, 2 days ago, we had a round table. We quoted figures from WHO and Ministry of Health. They look at the investment case of NCDs. Malaysia lost, if we properly tackle NCDs, the cost of NCDs is 64 billion. That's 4% of GDP. That's a lot of money. There's almost 60% of development budget because we don't treat. Why we get, there's many factors. One of the factors, we want you to become fat. We subsidize sugar. No other country in this region subsidize sugar except us. Now, per packet, 50 cents. We penalize, we give subsidy wrongly. I agree with AG. Subsidies we cannot handle it anymore because we give to the wrong people. Why subsidize sugar? Why subsidize instead of subsidize transport? He mentioned transport. I totally agree. Why I subsidize EV cars, Tesla cars? I don't subsidize Kancil. If you get EV cars, you don't pay excess duty, you don't pay sales tax, you don't pay import duties, you don't pay road tax. Makcik jual nasi goreng pisang, buy kelisa gala kuning tu, buy all these taxes. It's unfair, wrong incentive. It's not about the amount of subsidies. Who gets the subsidy and for what? Does it incentivize behavior? This is wrong incentive. I want you to become fat. This morning, I had breakfast with one of the European embassy. He was very proud. He has 2 cars, one for him, one for the wife. Both got few subsidy. He's worried government gonna take. I said, what you take in a month? He put 100 ringgit per week. A month, 400. Both cars. The subsidy is about 200 ringgit. 200 ringgit times 12 months, 2004. If you're the poorest in Malaysia, less than 4 kids, sumbangan tunai ramah is 2006. Why the rich and European are very rich, they still enjoy subsidy. So if I want to do SST, I wouldn't do SST to get 5 billion. People are going to scream at me, maki at me. I would do few subsidy first. For 5 billion out of our revenue, 330 billion is drop. I would do there's more equity in there. So we're not incentivizing behavior and we give to the wrong people. Economic structure is wrong. And even you work hard, your salary doesn't match, your purchasing power decline. I think to fix, leadership matters. Economic structure and incentive also matters. These two, I think, is the most important. If I have to choose one, I think leadership is the most important. Governance is the most important. People don't think that we can be a failed state. I don't want to be party pooper, somebody bring bad news. You look around the world, you look at history. Right after World War I, Argentina is richer than UK, richer than France, almost overtaking America. Then they got a crazy leader, now they're number 50. That was not too long ago. Then you say, okay, That one lama jauh. You take Philippines 1960 export doctors. They don't export meat, they export doctors. Second richest of the Singapore. You come Marcos, gone. Venezuela, 2 decades ago, year 2000, oil price goes up. The richest country in Latin America. Now poster boy for mismanagement. If governance is not respected, and there's a worry that we're moving that way. Never in Malaysian history, all bar president, past and current, wrote one open letter saying judiciary is in trouble. I think that we must protect, and that goes to governance leadership. If you got it wrong, I think regardless of good economic policy, we're not going to do well, because the key is, he met a lot of investors in private, we met a lot of investors. The key message has to be confidence. What we do is going to be better. You want to instill confidence for foreigners and, importantly, domestic. If you don't do that, or you don't instill confidence, you announce, people laugh, then we're going to have a problem. And this boils down to leadership. If leaders, we don't follow rule of law, it's not about economics. If you don't follow rule of law, then we get a problem. If somebody goes to jail sebab mencuri, then you give discount 160 million, then there's a problem. 160 million is a lot of money. Rather than tax sugar, we might take 160 million back from the guy. So our priority is wrong. Our approach is very wrong. Civil servant has good intention. They're very professional. We have a chance and honor to work with them. Fantastic. But if leadership is sengit sikit, then we get a problem. So to solve your long answer, to solve your problem, that has to come first.
Can I just
You want to respond to that? Yes.
Yeah, just to add to that. I mean, definitely leadership is very important. But leadership in doing what, in that sense, right? And we've gotten this far because we are not shy to take the difficult things, right? And it's not easy to do. And this is, in our parlance, we call it structural reform. Structural reforms is changing the way you do things, right? Sometimes you take away privileges, you raise prices, you do this and you do that, right? And the problem is, if we delay in doing it, then it becomes harder and harder to do it, right? Becomes harder and harder to do it because the adjustment will be so huge in one go. That's one. Second, also, it gets harder for the population to take that adjustment because we've grown accustomed to it, right? And we know this classic problem. We spoke about anything that we spoke about earlier in terms of foreign workers, whatever. To the extent that we've become hooked to it, the socio-political dimension to change it is very, very difficult. And a time when sometimes, and we have experienced this in the past, when we lacked political credibility, political clout, political stability, we take our foot off in undertaking. We spend a lot of time on, for example, transfer policies, income transfer policies, rather than policies that would really lift, like that was done by our forefathers. So to the point where we keep on delaying it, then it becomes crunch. We spoke about the subsidy mechanism, the price control mechanism that were simply unchanged to the point where it's causing not only diminishing returns, it's harming the economy, right? So remember when we talked about public transport many years ago, importance of public transport, everybody wants public transport. But the moment you talk about building MRT and LRT, not behind them yet. You don't want it. So there's inconsistency between personal wants versus the act for the greater good. So it becomes politically and socially very difficult to do the right things. And it takes a tremendous amount of leadership to pull it off together. And when we talk about structural reforms, and you've been postponing it so long, things become very intricately connected. And it gets harder to pull off. Maybe in the next round, I'll talk about the kind of things that we need to prioritize and are being prioritized and are being done.
Thank you, AG. Probably about 15 minutes, 20 minutes max. So before we take questions from the audience, I don't know how to say it. It seems that the designing policies now become much more harder. Like, it's not just inheriting the current problem, but it seems that we are also inheriting legacies, right? It is, you're talking about like, this doesn't happen overnight, right? It is, I mean, somewhere down the road, we have to admit the fact that we got it wrong. And we are just like kicking the can down the road and say that someone will come and solve these problems. But at least, we should tell them how to do it, right? I mean, and there are a lot of, future policymakers sitting in this hall. They're like, they love to work in Malaysia, but unfortunately we love the lower end, the higher end, they find it difficult to get a job here. But if they go home and say, okay, we want to design our policies and so on and so forth. So tell us, DG, like, AG, you just continue what you said just now. Like, what would be the reform? How do we get out from this? I wouldn't want to use the mess, but the problem here.
We started off with agreeing that Malaysia is a successful economy, right? And we are successful because of the things that we've done in the past. Unfortunately, perhaps we have become hooked to a low-cost model. We've postponed, we've kicked down the can too far, and it's time to do a lot of things, right? And I'll give you a super summary of the plan in terms of how to change this, how it has begun, how difficult it is, the state of play in that sense, right? And maybe Dr. Mat can provide with a critique, perhaps on where we can do better. Okay, the super summary is this. Number one, whether we like it or not, we need to get a little bit more money. You want to do reforms, you want to do difficult things, you need money, right? In order to do it, you need to get the money, and you need to spend it right. You need to spend it right on the right things. So, and you also need to consider things that are broken, including, for example, retargeting your subsidies and your price control mechanism. You need to fix the kind of broken market mechanism that has gotten us here, including the wage market, the wage clearing mechanism that I spoke about. We need to get to create more jobs. And in order to create more jobs, better jobs, you need the right kind of investments. I'm not talking about FDI, both FDI and DDI. You need to have quality investments in, not about the numbers, but the ones that deliver jobs. You need to tackle also your low-skilled foreign workers. We need to reform our education system. That goes without saying, but maybe that takes too long. In the immediate term, you immediately need to upskill, right? And we need to take care of our healthcare and our social protection. So that's the list of things that have been identified in public documents and are currently being pursued. Now, I'm going to go just to some of them, right? On the needing more money and spending it right. In order to do it, you must have a proper governance system. You can't have a system that allows you to wantonly spend your fiscal in a responsible manner. Hence, the passing of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. It talks about, your revenue collection, your expenditure, your debt limits, your governance in that sense. And that provides the framework for the things that we are seeing now, which includes, for example, the subsidy rationalization. You need to move away from broad mass subsidy that is so unfair to more targeted ones, right? And of course, it's going to be difficult. The moment you talk about things going up, including taxes going up, people are going to be unhappy, right? It is very difficult reform. But the fact is, our tax collection is very, very low. My super summary is this lah. We have a tax collection of around 300 billion. We spend 300 billion on operating expenditure, which includes our subsidies, right? And we spend 100 billion on development expenditure. And theoretically, for all those investments we spoke about, we need more money for investment, right? So you need to raise more money in that sense without harming certain parts of society. And when we talk about subsidy reforms, what we've seen so far is at least the niat, the nawaitu, is really to come up with systems that tries not to harm so much, especially the vulnerable ones. by nature, by the design of some of the reforms that we've seen, the diesel subsidy, for example, was done to the point where you really tried to protect, cost mechanism in that sense, right? Those who deserve, people in the logistics, for example, gets protected. And in the same spirit, I would imagine for round 95, it'll be something along those lines, right? Let's, of course, get the foreigners, get those who don't deserve it, they should pay going market prices. But let's tackle those who are vulnerable, right? Jobs via investment. We've spoken in terms of how our investments do no longer change things. Hence, there's a need for quality investments. We've seen very good numbers, Tengku Zafrul, PMX talk about 280 billion of approved investments. But what I want to see is how much that creates higher economic complexity and higher wage paying jobs. Data centers, for example, I'm not saying data centers are necessarily bad, but we want to make sure that we maximize the payoff in terms of jobs. We maximize in terms of their prevalence of providing us with AI services. The big win is not being hosted here and having big names here. The big win is it creates higher paying jobs for our population, and we're able to maximize on terms of their presence here in terms of the AI services that it helps us, right? We spoke about wage mechanism. I know not in this crowd, but civil servants got their higher pay. We talk about minimum wage adjustment. The next game is about differentiated minimum wage, maybe by job category, for example. We talk about progressive wage, but importantly, is from the jobs that's created, a fair share goes to the workers. If your productivity has gone up, then you should get higher pay. But we're not seeing that. So why is that the case? So that would be a big policy call on the part of the government. Multi-tier levy, right? The more you hire foreign workers, depending on the sectors, the more you have to pay, right? So that's a mechanism. And to help that is not just having headcount, you must have the right technology to do it. Many people don't know there's a program called Tech Up, meaning it helps everyone from SMEs to big firms to advise them in terms of how technology can help production. I spoke about Mamak restaurant using dishwasher, getting them to get the right dishwasher such that it obviates the need from them having to acquire foreign workers to wash dishes. Remember the example where foreign workers wash our utensils using the drain at the back. So something like that. We clearly we need to move on from that. We spoke about education. I don't want to go there. Very crowded space, very emotive. But I think a quick shortcut is for us to upskill our workers. And that involves the right courses. You don't understand something, you attend something to build up your skill, right? How to use AI, how to use digitalization in the workspace. Are there enough training programs to tackle that? Are there enough incentive mechanisms to actually do that, right? And I think one thing about all these reforms, it needs to be sequenced. A lot of these public hoo-ha now, right? I know no matter how well designed, to the extent that they are too bunched up together, it's going to create a lot of pain. So communication and finding ways to alleviate that pain is very, very important, right? So I know there's a lot of industry consultation and things like that, but it must come also from the view of helping those who are most affected by it. After all these reforms, we know how difficult it is. It is about policy trade-offs. It is about helping those who are most affected while achieving those bigger goals. Endgame, these are precisely the kind of rehabilitation that we need. You go to a hospital, you are sick, you have to go to rehabilitation, and physio and everything. Physiotherapy is not easy, but that's precisely what we need. It's gonna get very difficult. We have to accept it at a time when public discourse is very difficult. I'm sure arising from this, people will quote us for the wrong reasons. People will quote us, take snippets and come up with the wrong headlines. Whereas what we're trying to say is, sometimes you need to equip yourself with knowledge. You need to make the hard choices. And when the hard choices come, whether we like it or not, we have to accept some of it. Right? I'll pause here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, EG. In interest of time, probably we can take a couple of questions. And maybe Dr. Muhammad can also address some of the points that EG have raised. So we have one there and too many. It's all right. If you can keep your questions short and maybe we just collect maybe 4, all right? And then both Doc and EG can respond. Maybe we start from here first.
Assalamualaikum, I'm Rasid from Malaysian Financial Planning Council. Just we discussed just now that panel 1 said that we need good leader, strong leader. Panel 2 said when leader wanted to implement something, let's say MRT, it happened in our backyard, we are not happy. So for example, subsidy of petrol, for example, let's say we wanted to give subsidy only for the lower income. The middle income say not happy. Why? The middle income are the one who's paying more tax to the government. So it's not fair, they say. So how can we implement all this? So I believe that's a big challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman behind.
Thanks. Asrof Khalid from the Galen Center. I work in healthcare and we are looking very closely at what's happening in the healthcare sector. But I caught the MK2 on Prof just the other day mentioning about EPF contributions, and he said that the proof of people's wages on the increase is because there's more contribution to EPF. Now, him being a former EPF CEO would know that that's not necessarily the case. It just means that people earning more maybe are getting more and they're contributing more, but not necessarily that those earning less earn less. They are contributing more, they're not. So my question here is, you raised Assistant Governor concerning being addicted to the cheap or deceptively cheap lifestyle. We look at healthcare as a very big case in point and dilemma here right now, which has caught us in a bind because we've known the solution for more than 30, 40 years since the 80s, what we need to do. But we haven't done it. We're kicking the can down to successive governments and nobody has been able to do it, which is to pay appropriately what healthcare costs. Healthcare doesn't cost 1 ringgit, it never has. 5 ringgit, never has. But we are thinking that Malaysian healthcare is cheap. We tell that to the world, we say that. And unfortunately today, that deception has stopped, that illusion is gone because we're losing our doctors, our nurses, medical assistants, because we cannot pay them what they should be paid. Why? Because we want to go to the doctor, we don't want to pay what they should be paying. We are wanting to pay heavily subsidized, 98% of the cost is subsidized, and that's what we want to pay for. And we're not even wanting to contribute more through taxation or national health insurance. So what is the way out there in terms of the moral dilemma? Sorry to put you on the spot there, but I thought maybe Dr. Muhammad and the Assistant General could comment on that. Thanks.
Maybe two, that brother there, quick one, the red color, yes, go ahead. Is that the last one?
Okay, so Assalamualaikum. My name is Arya. I'm a student here at INSEF. So a few weeks ago, I attended a talk organized by Khazanah Institute at ASB. They invited Professor Guy Standing to talk about basic income. So my question is, should Malaysia learn from the experience of Iran, where they had to rationalize their fuel and bread subsidies in 2010, and instead of targeting their subsidies, they dispersed basic income to the whole population? And is there any benefit to continue this policy of mean testing and targeted subsidies in the 21st century? Thank you.
Okay. All good? Okay. Just, we just one last one here. I think the brother that behind, right? The red color one here. I think you raise your hand first, right? Okay, last one.
All right, so thank you. I'll be very brief in my question. So much has been said about the rising cost of goods and services, and as well as the standard of living as well. While tending towards the meaning wages to be constant and flat. Concerning one of those very vital point that was raised about removal of subsidy in terms of petroleum, I was having a kind of a starter with regards to that if now tax or subsidy is being removed, then it's going to, of course, skyrocket, the GDP, show the true color of the GDP. So what is the policymaker looking towards in ensuring that doesn't skyrocket and causing high inflation? So my second question will be regarding to what is the policymakers doing in terms of exportation, because when we have rising cost of goods and services, of course it means we import more than the exportation part of it. So what is the policymaker doing in charge of making more of the exportation rather than more importation as well? Because cost, talking about rising of cost, of course, it's a global issue in post COVID, and of course that's been affecting most of the developed countries that we speak today. So these are my question, and what can we do, of course, to ensure that we empower the youth, because that is the most important co-factor in having, of course, a stable and an equitable economy. Thank you.
All right. So thank you so much, gentlemen. Doc, you want to go first? You got all the questions?
Yeah.
Healthcare policy response,
The healthcare I give to Negara.
cash income.
Maybe I'll
You
start
choose
with
whichever you want to take.
I'll start with basic income. Iran is good example on, even though the oil price still very low. Iran is a good example. The problem with targeting, if you do fuel subsidy targeting, a lot of poor will be missed out. You look at the Brazil experience, one of the most extensive, Bolsa Familia. Bottom 20%, 30% do not get it. The second largest program on cash transfer is Philippines, the 4-piece. Majority of the bottom 20 also did not get it. We did for UNICEF before COVID and during COVID. 30% of those who live in low-cost flat do not get cash assistance. You're going to have a lot of people missing out. Exclusion error. It's better to make it universal. If you want to remove subsidy, do it gradually, but float the price. And I want to help the poor. It's easier to exclude the rich than try to include the poor, because you know who the rich are. So you exclude them. If it's not the 1-2 rich people got in, or middle class, it's okay, you close your eyes. How much is it going to be? It's not going to be much. But you don't exclude those who need it the most. And do not dehumanize, stigmatize the poor. You're poor, you go to this, like Indonesia, petrol, you were in Indonesia before, subsidy petrol, what's the term that they use? You go and line up, long queue. Same like how we do for breakfast program, rancangan makanan tambahan. You line up, you eat this food. So on, kena chop, losers, poor. You make it universal. You can exclude it in a smarter way. Don't mean testing target. Many studies have shown you will exclude, and we will exclude. We had BRIM since 2012. 2012. In KL, 30% was excluded this last year. How is it possible? So many factors. The rest Fra can answer. But I want to add one, since this is the last round. What do we want? What do we want also depend what we measure. GDP is important. Okay, besar ke kecil. But who gets it? Social mobility matters. Inclusive growth matters. Poverty numbers matters. How the children are doing matters. We must, now even 13 Malaysian applying GDP first. I put GDP last. I put what matters. We targeting, if I want to put short-term targeting, I put what they propose. Living wage. Short-term in 3 years or in 5 years after this 13 Malaysian plan, living wage has to be, before you did 2007, right? It's going to be what, 3,003 or whatever. That is going to be the target. That's our immediate target. Then everything would adjust. Economic policy, our industrialization policy, labor policy would have to adjust. What we target matters. Currently, we're not targeting what really matters. That includes fiscal policy. We do not have enough money. I agree, we do not have enough money. But the way we collect is very regressive. Even SST, people, you cannot blame people. I buy fruits, I kena tax. I buy gold, I don't get tax. I buy cheap car, I got tax. I buy expensive car, I don't get tax. I got 100,000 in salary, I pay tax. If I get dividend tax, I get 2%. You pay 24, dividend 2%. Other countries very high. So tax fiscal policy must be progressive. We are quite regressive. Even our expenditure side, on the right side, is also regressive. We talk about this. Subsidies. That is the bulk. Total subsidy 60 billion. I think fuel subsidy only 50. Bucket regressive. And the next question is, you collect for what? If I collect to build 100 billion at HSR, I don't want to pay tax. Why do I want to build HSR? What money used for is equally important. And I always say in the past 2-3 budgets, do not spend on HSR. It's going to make 3% rich. 1% going to be super rich, who runs the country now, is going to be super rich, but many of us do not benefit. What is it for is important. And that goes to my point. Governance. Tax rate, the highest tax rate is in Nordic countries, average 54%. Tax avoidance, the lowest, is Nordic countries, despite high tax rate. Why? Politician corrupt, jail. I go outside, efficient rail transport service. Education, school, health. I see where my taxpayers' money goes. If governance not there, he also mentioned, I agree with Fra, people do not trust, then you're going to have an issue. Governance still matter. Then you want to collect tax, you're not angry. People will be supportive. Over to you.
Thank you. I think we don't have time to tackle all the questions. So basically, my message here is when you talk about health and things like that, I've spoken about a lot in terms of there's a plan for all these reforms in a sequence manner. The big game, the public documents are out there. It is being implemented. There's a lot of public hoo-ha about it simply because we've been postponing it for so long, such that the adjustment becomes so big. You talk about health reform, you talk about 30 years ago, that's the reality. So now it's payback time. And we are the generation to have to pay for it. Us and our kids. Our kids even more if you don't get our act together. We've spoken a lot about government, public policy, blah, 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 right? But there's also the public sector and the private sector. And the private sector, there are businesses and there are households. There's you and me, right? There's you and me. So my last word on public policy, I want to comment on each, would be, I think we must make jobs, quality jobs, as our front and center. Enough lah talking about GDP, growth and everything. Sexy, good enough, got us here. But we need jobs to be front and center. So what I call upon you is, every time you hear about, big number, growth, investments, whatever, the question to ask is jobs, right? Ask the policymaker, ask the minister, ask the agencies, ask the private sector, how many jobs are you creating from this and what kind of jobs are you creating? You talk about this project creating 6,000 jobs. Ask the question, really? What kind of jobs? Show me the numbers. I'm going to revisit this in 3 years once the project is completed. Show me the numbers, right? So we need to make that conversation front and center. So that's one on public-private. Second, in terms of us, individuals, right? When we see bad grades, when we see bad enrollment and things like that, yes, no doubt, quality of education and everything. But we must do better about, I don't know what's the word, is the jati diri for our younger generation, right? China has a lot of graduates, but where's the moral compass? I'm not so sure. Wall Street has a lot of billionaires and everything. Where's the moral compass? I'm not sure. Is the moral compass and the grit, right? Students are failing STEM courses and everything. Why is that the case? Is it just blaming the government every time? No. Let's start also call on the parents to do that, right? We got here because of our grit. and grit is increasingly missing. How do we create grit in the national psyche, right? So we need leadership, we need schools, we need parents to also come in here. I know there's a lot of Grab riders, you know, you see these headlines about why do I need to go to school when I can earn this kind of money? Yes, it's good money, but it doesn't last. It could not last, right? So that's on your point. The final thing is on the private sector, on the part of employers, right? Dr. Mohd talked about the return to workers, which is very low, 32-35%-ish, one of the lowest in the world. Meaning the private sector can do a heck of a lot more. What I'm proposing here is gaji madani. The concept is a little bit like menu rahmah. Remember menu rahmah, RM5? So now for the employers that can afford it, please pay living wage. Make it a call. You know, we can celebrate these fellas who pay gaji madani, if you want to call it gaji madani, at living wage, starting at minimum of 3,000, right? So the lowest level in every employer starts at 3,000. Thank you.
No, Dato is smiling because all INSEF workers earn more than living wage. Yeah. We just want to declare in the newspaper maybe very soon. Yeah. So with that, Dr. Muhammad, it's always pleasure to hear you. And AG, fascinating the way that you have articulated the points. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm sorry we have to cut it a bit short because there's another event going to happen very soon. But without a doubt, this is one of the best panels that I actually have moderated. Again, Dr. Muhammad and AG, it's a pleasure to have both of you at INSEF. MC, back to you.